ASU's running it back with nearly the entire roster from last season, but that doesn't mean it won't be their downfall in 2025.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks to all of you for making us your first listen of the day. ASU's running it back with almost the entire roster returning. That could be a really good thing, or it could be a really bad thing, which we talk about a little bit later before we kind of come to a verdict on why this is a double-edged sword. Let's start with why this is a good thing as we play a little bit of Sun Devil Advocate, which we'll see more tomorrow. I'll tease that up at the end of the episode. This could be a really good thing for ASU. And you will find me on this side of the debate that this is a very good thing for ASU. They are returning not just the majority of this roster, but they are returning almost every single key piece of this roster. There are guys that are gone, and we'll have to inevitably talk about them because you can't not talk about these players that are gone. You can't just completely ignore it. As much as I wanted to come into this episode and not address them, you can't. You simply can't. But I mean, I'm going to read you off some of the most important pieces returning. Are you ready? Here we go. It's a lot. Quarterback 1 is back, Sam Leavitt. Your number 2 running back, who could be your number 1 running back, Tyson Brown, is back. Your number 1 receiver, Jordyn Tyson, is back. Your number 1 tight end, Shimon Mateer, is back. Your left tackle, your left guard, your right tackle. In order, Josh Atkins, Ben Coleman, Kyle Scott, Max Yoniker are back. You're not losing too much from the offense. And the stuff that you are losing, you've got some replacements in store there. Plus the transfers, which honestly, we're not going to talk about the transfers very much. We're talking about the returning roster. Defense, this is disgusting what you're returning on defense. Your top 3 edge rushers, Clayton Smith, Elijah O'Neal, Prince Dorba, are back. 3 of your top 4 defensive tackles are back. CJ Fight, Zach Swanson, Jacob Rich, Kongaika. Your starting 3 linebackers of the 4, let's try it again. 3 of your 4 main linebackers from last year, because Caleb McCullough did get involved a lot, are back. Keyshawn Elliott, Jordan Crook, Zyrus Fiaseu. Yeah, you're looking good there as well. Your top 2 corners are back. You've got Keith Abney and Javen Robinson. Call whoever you want, corner 1, corner 2. They're both great. And 2 of your 3 safeties are back. Xavion Alford, Ghost Rouser. It does not get much better than everything that I just said. I mean, looking at the offense, you've got 4 starters on the offensive line, your number 1 receiver, and your number 1 quarterback, and your number 1 tight end. That's 7 starters right there that are returning. You have to replace your center, your number 1 running back, and a couple of your wide receivers. Defensively, this is pretty much your starters because ASU ran so many rotations. You are replacing one of your key defensive tackles with Jeff Clark. You're replacing who was arguably your best linebacker last year in Caleb McCullough, but God, Keyshawn Elliott's back, man. And then you are replacing, and I don't know how you replace him, Shamari Simmons, who played slot, who played corner, who played safety, who did everything for you. There are some big guys that you're losing. This is not going to be some kind of seamless replacement for those guys. Cam Scadaboo, I don't know how you replace him at running back. The people's running back, if you would, and arguably the greatest running back in Sun Devil history. That's a conversation that we're going to have down the road. I don't know if it's this week or if it's in 2 months, but we will be talking about that eventually. I don't know how you replace the first team center for the Big 12 All-Conference team in Lee Fotanu. I don't know how you do that. Caleb McCullough is going to be way more difficult to replace than people realize. Shamari Simmons will be nearly impossible to replace. But with all of that said, I mean, the 5 guys that you're replacing, Scadaboo, Fotanu, Jeff Clark, McCullough, and Simmons, all very important players, yes. But you've got equally important guys that are returning at different positions. Losing Cam Scadaboo, that sucks. You know who's back? Wide receiver 1, Jordyn Tyson. The same Jordyn Tyson who could have been first team All Big 12 had he not gotten injured towards the end of the season. Over 1,100 yards last year. Him and Sam Leavitt were absolutely cooking with each other. He's back. He's healthy. Quarterback 1 to wide receiver 1, going to be absolutely disgusting this year. Losing your center sucks. Returning 4 of your starters on the offensive line, including your bookend tackles, that's pretty good. Replacing one of your starting D tackles, one of your starting linebackers, and arguably the best player on defense, going to be pretty hard. And then you look and it's the other starters, and it's most of the 2 deep guys behind them. They are set in a good position. And don't forget, like, there's backups that are returning as well, or guys that we just didn't get to see too much last year due to injuries. They're returning to this team. Raleek Brown, maybe the most exciting returner for the entire team that we didn't get to see much last year. Malik McClain, who is going to open the year probably as your number 2 receiver. You've got Jaden Fortier, very high on him. He was your 4-star tight end from a year ago. He's going to be back after missing the entirety of the year. There's depth along the offensive line that is returning. You've got linebackers Martell Hughes and Tate Romney. This show is very big on Tate Romney. Absolutely loved him in 2023. He was injured last year, which is why we didn't see him too much because he's the 5th linebacker at that point. ASU loved using 4 guys last year. There's a chance for Romney to slide into one of those roles for the team. Corners, it's the young guys, man. Chris Johnson Jr., Plas Johnson, Tony Lewis and Kuba, Rodney Bimmage. You're going to see some of them on the field this year. And then at safety, another guy that this podcast is very big on, Montana Warren. There's a lot of these young guys, the seemingly endless amount of depth for the Sun Devils that are returning. You also are returning the entirety of the coaching staff, starting with Kenny Dillingham, the head coach, offensive coordinator Marcus Arroyo. As very good friend of the podcast, Spencer McLaughlin, put it, we're going to talk to him very, very soon, by the way. When you return your head coach, offensive coordinator, and your starting quarterback, you are in just as good a position as anybody else to have repeat success. I mean, it's phenomenal. But you're bringing back your defensive coordinator. You're bringing back your positional coaches. Hines Ward for the receivers. Sean Aguano for the running backs. Brian Carrington for the corners. Like, everyone is returning in this coaching staff. And that could change because Rashad Samples, who was your wide receiver coach in 2023, came back with the team and then took a new job around this time a year ago. It was about halfway through spring ball. Like, these things happen. But right now, your coaching staff is back. And again, head coach, offensive coordinator, quarterback 1 are all back. There's so much depth on this team, but there's none more important than the offensive and defensive lines, the running back room, which could be pivotal to this team in 2025. You've got linebackers that are returning, and you got your top 2 corners with some of the potential depth behind them. Safety could be good. Tight end could be good. There's so much here, man. There's so much here. So many starters, so much production from this team. Like, it's actually insane when you look at this team for ASU that won 11 games last year, that crushed the Big 12 competition and goes on to the college football playoff and takes Texas, a blue blood team, to double overtime. And they're back. That's special. You are primed to repeat as the Big 12 champions this upcoming year. There's no debating it because this team just proved it. It's one thing if, like, ASU's returning as, like, the 3rd place team. You wouldn't say they're primed at that point. You'd say they're in a great position. But a team that has already proven to be able to win the conference championship game, that team is primed at that point because they're battle tested and they've already shown, yeah, we can win it once, we can win it again. That's the difference. It's a special unit. But this retention may not be a good thing We're going to talk about that next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let me talk to you about our friends over at Wayfair now. The holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC because let's face it, guys, when you are stressed out after everything that goes on at the end of the year, there's nothing feels better than tidying up that house. And I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into my routine. I know that I am very much lacking on vacuuming my house, but I'll tell you what, if you're tidying up, cleaning out, or want to give your space a new start this year, Wayfair has everything you need all within your budget. I'm looking for furniture right now, stuff that isn't hand-me-downs that I had when I moved into my place. And Wayfair makes it easy to find stuff that's in my style, it's in my budget, and of course, there's a free and hassle-free delivery, even for larger items. Wayfair's site is also really easy to navigate, and I'm finding everything that I want to find in no time. There's something for every style in every home, no matter the space or budget. You like modern stuff, there's modern stuff. You like traditional, there's traditional. Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration and space. What's your decor style? Well, I got good news for you. You can check it out. You can find everything that you're looking for. It's the best. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's Wayfair, WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Thanks for making Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day, guys. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Let's go ahead and take a look at why this roster retention. Let's try it again. Why this roster retention might not be a good thing for ASU. Let's start with something that has nothing to do with ASU. In fact, it's more of an anomaly than anything else, which is why we shouldn't put too much stock into it. But things happen sometimes where you bring back so much of your roster, and there's times where you're able to take that step forward and be a really good team and contend for titles. Look at Michigan from a couple of years ago, brought back so much of their defense. Notre Dame this year, how many seniors on their defense were there to lead them? Ohio State brought a lot of their guys back. They added some additions, but there you go. They win the national championship game. But there are some exceptions. One of them, and this one absolutely blows my mind. Same conference, Oklahoma State. Heading into 2024, they returned the majority of their starters. I want to say it was 21 of 22 starters that were coming back for this team. And it wasn't like average starters. There was a lot of NFL potential here. They brought back their wide receiver one, Brennan Presley. They brought back their starting quarterback, Alex Bowman. Think of him what you will. I'm not super big on him, but it's your starting quarterback. They brought back some of their defensive players, their linebackers, Nick Martin and Colin Oliver. Ooh, Colin Oliver is one of my dudes. They were all back as well. Oh, and then you had the reigning Doak Walker winner in Ollie Gordon. That should be all I need right there. Offense, I got an established quarterback. I got my number one receiver. I got my number one running back. Defense, I've got players all over the place, but I've got 2 NFL level linebackers. Yeah, we should be set up really, really well. And then you've got Mike Gundy as your head coach. I don't know what your feelings are towards Mike Gundy because I know he's very controversial. Some people absolutely love him. Some people despise the guy. I used to love him. He's wearing thin with me with some of the comments that he's made recently. But the fact remains, Mike Gundy is one of the most accomplished coaches in college football in the last, since the turn of the century. Could be a Hall of Fame coach one day. I don't know. I have not looked into it. But these things happen. You bring back a quarterback, a star running back, and so many other guys, and they flop. 3-9 last year. By the way, 3-0 in non-conference play, winless in conference play. I will tell you, nobody saw that coming. I will tell you, majority of people would have told you Oklahoma State had the best chance to win the Big 12 championship a year ago. They were certainly one of the 5 best teams, one of the 4, maybe one of the 3 best teams that was going into the 2024 season. And they sucked. No other way to describe them. That is something. Now let's take it back to ASU. This ASU team, there's no denying they caught the world sleeping. Picked to finish dead last in the Big 12. And then for them to turn it into what they did, which was a 10-win program in the regular season, and then absolutely blew out their opponent, who we'll talk about, in the Big 12 championship game. No one saw that coming. Certainly not Locked On Sun Devils host Richie Bradshaw, who has said, or has pointed out, I said 7-5 was their record for last year over the summer. I said I was hopelessly optimistic about the team to be able to go to a bowl game. Yeah, I certainly did not see going to the college football playoff and nearly winning one of the games and going to the semifinal. Yeah, no, I didn't see that coming. Nobody saw that coming. Let's not pretend that anybody did. And if somehow you are that sicko, just know that I love you and you are my favorite person in the whole world. But they caught the world sleeping. There's no denying that. There's a lot of tape on this team now. And there's a lot of tape on all the returners. You are not going to get this conference or the rest of college football to go into the year and disrespect Arizona State Sun Devils football. There is the respect there. Now, they may not be considered contenders to win it all or anything. They may not be considered the heavyweight contenders to make any kind of impact beyond the Big 12. Like, it just kind of happens. And especially in a conference that gets disrespected. Man, I've said it before. I thought we were leaving that behind when we left the Pac-12. It might be worse in the Big 12. But can you do it twice? I don't know. Because just in the Big 12 by itself, you're one of the favorites to win. But there's other teams that got better. There are 3 teams, that are on your schedule this year that you played last year that are going to be very interested in beating you again. None more so than Iowa State, who you dominated in the Big 12 championship game. You see them in November. Yeah, Ames, Iowa. It's a little cold out there in November. Very foggy, very rainy. They're going to be pissed off. And they're returning a lot of guys too, including their quarterback, Rocco Becht. That's not going to be an easy game. Utah is back. You're going to Rice-Eccles this year. They've got some really important players that are returning on defense, and then they upgraded their quarterback spot. And I can't remember the kid's name. I just know he came from New Mexico. He's a Tucson native. He's very good. Devin Dampier? That sounds right. Devin Dampier. Utah's going to be much better this year, in theory. And then there's Texas Tech, who actually did beat you last year. Well, they're coming to Tempe this time. This is a home game, but this is not a game that ASU should be looking at and going, oh, yeah, this is our chance for big-time revenge and everything. Like, yeah, it is a revenge game. But you know what? They got better than they were a year ago. And that's with losing guys like Taj Brooks, the star running back, because they've got Baron Morton back, their quarterback, and then they had one of the 5 best transfer classes in the country. With the roster retention, with the coaching staff retention, they're going to be one of the better teams in the conference this year. Do not be surprised if they are contending to win the conference. They're going to want to beat you twice. They're going to want to go 2-0 against you to start your career, or not your career, your I don't know. I can't think of the word. In the Big 12, your stint, I guess. Those 3 teams are going to have an eye out for you. And then there's 3 more teams that you didn't play last year that are going to be very intent on taking you down. Colorado. Yeah, we know Colorado very well. We got to go to Boulder this year to play them. What's Colorado going to look like? Who knows? They got 2 quarterbacks coming in that are going to try and replace Shedeur Sanders. I don't know how that's going to work. They're also losing the Heisman Trophy the Heisman Trophy winner in Travis Hunter. You've got TCU that's coming to the Valley. I like TCU. I think I wouldn't call them like Well, I wouldn't call anyone a sleeping giant because that's ASU. You got to trademark that, man. Like, total side note, ASU should trademark the sleeping giant. But TCU, they're right there to getting back into contending. I'm worried about them. And then there's Baylor, who I am incredibly high on. Maybe higher than a lot of people are. And I am very nervous to going to Waco to play them. That's a lot, man. That's a lot of guys who want to dethrone the champs. And these champs that we have all the tape on and we know what they are, what they want to do, who they are, the coaching staff's back. Like it's going to be a lot of pressure on ASU to repeat their success, but also find a way to do it with the same way that they did it this year, or do you change it up entirely? I don't know. What I do know is there are some mindsets that ASU cannot have going into this year. They cannot go out with this mindset of we're all back. Look at us. Look at this team. Everyone's back. Oh yeah, we're gonna run it back. We got Sam Leavitt. We got Jordyn Tyson. That defense is all there. Who can contend with us? There's no competition. There's no one who can match us. That is a mindset that we see sometimes. Now, do I think it'll happen? No, because I like the way that Kenny Dillingham has this team thinking. But it could happen, man. It could very much happen. It's a dangerous mindset to have when you are a roster as talented as ASU that is bringing everybody back. There is always a chance and a possibility that you could get humbled, even with the same team. And the schedule is just as unforgiving as last year. Now, the schedule did not turn out to be what we thought it was going to be a year ago, but that doesn't mean it wasn't bad. This is a dangerous schedule as well. It's a double-edged sword for this team returning, good and bad. That's coming up next on the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks again to everybody for making Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Double-edged sword. There's a bright side here. There's a downside here. Let's talk about the bright side. With the returners, the 50-plus returners, over 50 returners from last year's team are back. Starters, second team, depth chart, recruits, red shirts, they're back. Entire coaching staff is back. But of all of that is returning, nothing is more important than the number one quarterback, the offensive coordinator, and the head coach that are returning. Kenny Dillingham, Marcus Arroyo, Sam Leavitt. Those three are back. And there is all the potential in the world that Sam Leavitt, who blew away expectations last year, there is no debating that. Nobody saw that coming. For him to come to Arizona State and have one of the greatest freshman seasons ever, to lead ASU to a double-digit win season, which they have not seen in over a decade, and the most wins that ASU has seen since before the year 2000. One of the best teams ASU has seen, period. No one saw that coming. Him setting records as a freshman and then having records that he was right there on being able to break. Special season. And guess what? He's got the same guys coming back to develop him. His best friend, Jordyn Tyson, is back. Those two were electric together. Offensive line, they should be getting better. In fact, the continuity on the offensive line, I can't remember the last time we saw this level that ASU was having going into this year. 4 or 5 starters. You lose a NFL caliber center. That's brutal. These other 4 players, I'm not saying right now they're NFL players. They could get there with proper coaching from this team and more experience and gelling together now, having a year playing all together. There was a lot of health with this unit too. And I don't include health into any of my arguments. You can't predict injuries. I think it's useless to try and do that. This offensive line should be better than they were a year ago. And the offensive line played much better than I gave them credit for throughout the year. I think that this group is going to be definitively better than last year. I'm not saying one of the best in the country. I'm not saying the best in the conference, but a group that was above average, I think could be great this year. run blocking, pass blocking, and just having that chemistry and connection with each other and calling stuff out. They could be great. And that sets up your quarterback for great success as well. That could set up your running game to, pun intended, carry the offense. Because if Sam Leavitt has some trouble adjusting in his second year, because he has got Jordyn Tyson back. He's got Shimon Mateer back. Brand new receiver room. Like Malik McLean is there. He got 2 passes. He only caught 1 pass from Sam Leavitt last year. Xavier Guillory is gone. Melcon Stovall is gone. Troy O'Mary is gone. Jake Smith is gone. It's a brand new room. That's tough. Cam Scadaboo is gone. There's no replacing Cam Scadaboo. You're going to have to try, but there's no replacing him, let alone his receiving production. Yeah, that's gone. There is no replacing that. You do have the depth in the backfield, at least, with Kyson Brown, with Jason Brown, with Raleek Brown. And then you got some guys that are coming in through the portal and guys that are coming in as recruits. Again, we're not talking about them because this is talking about the roster retention. But the running back room is good enough to carry this team, pun intended, figuratively, literally. And then the defense, forget about it, man. Forget about it, baby, because that defense is great. And it's all back. You lost some key players. You lost the Shamari Simmons. But you've got guys who were still all conference last year. CJ Fight was all conference. Keyshawn Elliott was all conference. I can't remember if it was Javen Robinson or Keith Abney who was a honorable mention. Ghost Rouser is back. I think he was honorable mention too. He might have been second team. There's a lot that's coming back, man. Like, even with losing some big names, you brought big names back as well. Defense is going to be just fine. All right, time to play Sun Devil Advocate. Here's the downside. Here's the second edge of the sword. There are still issues with this team, and you may have the same issues that you had last year. Because so much is back, it's going to be a matter of, were you able to successfully address it? Or is this going to be a team that continues to persist with the same problems that they had a year ago? This is probably the scariest thing for me. It's not just losing guys. Like on offense, Cam Scadaboo, Leavitt Fotanu, Xavier Guillory. It's not a matter of losing guys who are NFL caliber players. It's have you fixed the stuff that cost you games last year with the same returning roster, with the same returning staff? You would think so. You would think that they would sit there in their film rooms and on the practice field and go, A, B, C, D, these were the weaknesses last year. This is where we got to get better. But that's not always how it works. And we could see the exact same issue of ASU being a one-half team where they come out the game strong and then they struggle to close it out. They may struggle to win the game-changing plays. 4th and 18. 4th and 18. BYU almost came back. They had the Hail Mary, and Javen Robinson's interception was an overthrown football. As great as that play was, that was way, way more on Jake Retzlaff, the BYU quarterback, having a horrible pass. Because otherwise, they were just bullying the young corners on the team. You've got to be able to win those big plays. K-State trying to make a comeback in the second half of their game. UCF made a comeback. Mississippi State early in the year made a comeback. Like, ASU's got to be able to close these games out. This was their biggest issue last year, and almost everything is returning. Are you going to be the same? History repeating itself? I don't know. And again, you got the big departures on offense that I mentioned. Scadaboo, Fotanu, Guillory. Is Sam Leavitt ready? Or are we in for a sophomore slump? That's another huge concern for this team. Because it happens. Where a guy comes out and they dominate, and it's across college football, and then they just really regress because defenses figure out how to play them. Same group. You hope that he's good to go. He's losing huge players. He may be in for a sophomore slump. History shows us more often than not. You also have the same issues on defense with everyone returning. None more so than an ineffective pass rush. They did not get sacks last year. And that was a huge problem down the stretch for ASU's. They could not bring down quarterbacks. What changed? Nothing. Same edge rushers, same defensive linemen, same linebackers, same defense, the blitz packages, all of it. So you're hoping that ends up being a good thing. But again, we're playing Sun Devil advocate here. I hope you guys appreciate that pun, by the way. And you could just have the same issues. ASU didn't get a ton of sacks in 2023. They didn't get a ton of sacks last year. We may be in for a third season with minimal sack production. There's also just the fact of putting up better numbers, period. Again, with those second half comebacks, how many 100-yard rushers in the Big 12 did ASU have that year? The kid Giddens from K-State went over 100. You had RJ Harvey, after you clamped him in the first half, went over 100 for UCF. Taj Brooks went over 100. Kiner, the running back from Cincinnati, went over 100. They were consistently giving up 100-yard games to running backs last year. That can't continue to happen. You hope that they play it much closer to what they did against Texas, where they allowed less than 50 rushing yards to that team. You got to get highlight reel plays too. Like the Javen Robinson interception, you need a lot more of those. You got to force them, and you got to close out these games. Are the youngsters ready to replace some of the big name guys that are gone? That's for both sides of the football. It's going to be tough. So overall, ASU is in a great place with this returning roster, and especially the key positions. And that's where you find me on that side of the argument. But again, ASU has got to be ready to improve their weak areas. They have got to be ready for teams that know their returners. They have tape on Sam Leavitt. They have tape on Jordyn Tyson. They have tape on the linebacker group. They have tape on Javen Robinson and Keith Abney. They have tape on Kenny Dillingham, how Marcus Arroyo calls his offense, how Brian Ward calls his defense. So I don't want things to change definitively because so much of that was successful. But you better be ready for these teams that have an idea that they didn't have a year ago on how to play Arizona State. Could be a great thing, or could be your downfall. Are you Oklahoma State? No. Or are you? I don't know. Are you going to be closer to Notre Dame returning their players? I don't know. This is a very interesting situation that the Sun Devils are in. They could be wildly successful, or they could fall on their face and just get embarrassed. What do you guys think? Are you of the proponent that I am, that this is a great thing for ASU to be returning their starters? Or are you worried that the same issues that happened last year will continue into this year, or the guys just simply will not get better? Let me know in the comments, or you can hit me up on Twitter at RichieBrats36, the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you're getting your shows, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and you'll get an update whenever we post new content. I appreciate each and every single one of you guys for tuning in to make Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day, and a shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. We'll be back again tomorrow with a guest on the show. I mentioned him earlier, and I got to shout him out. Locked On College Football's one and only Spencer McLaughlin will be joining the show as we play another round of Sun Devil Advocate, looking at the upcoming schedule. I have said I like the upcoming schedule. There are people who do not like the upcoming schedule. Let's talk to Spencer McLaughlin about his thoughts, and then we highlight the three most important, if not have to win games for next year. I'll see you guys tomorrow along with Spencer. Until then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.